Welcome to Formula World. I'm your host Dylan Shelley, and here's what's on this episode. First up on Formula World, Hamilton's complaining pisses off Formula E driver. Defending F1 world champion Lewis Hamilton is seen by many as somewhat of a polarising figure. He's been vocal about many things, and one of them has been the perceived inequality in motorsports where money often trumps talent. Oliver Rowland, Formula E driver from Britain, has criticised the likes of Hamilton for only speaking about such issues but never actually doing anything about them. He began by explaining the current situation for grassroots motorsport. I know firsthand how much it costs to run a karting team. People say you should get rid of teams because they bring out more costs, but then at the same time, as a team, we provide a package for the driver to develop much quicker than if he was on his own. Especially in Britain, we have really good grassroots karting and they tend to get really good really quickly, so it's very difficult. And then he elaborated on why he's sick of guys complaining but doing nothing to solve the problem. I'm not on the same level as the top F1 guys, but I put my hand in my pocket to help people who I think deserve it and probably couldn't go to the next level without that help. I notice that the people saying it in the press and things like that, maybe they could do something. It pisses me off a little bit sometimes when I hear people complaining about it, but then actually they're not doing much themselves. For example, Lewis said a couple of months ago that people need motorsport grassroots and all this sort of stuff. Even if he was to put his name against 3 or 4 drivers that were doing exceptionally well, that would help draw in sponsorship for them. Vettel not concerned about points gap to Leclerc. Ferrari's Sebastian Vettel has been the subject of a lot of conversations in F1, mostly centred around his contract situation and the alleged drop in performance over the last 2 years. He began by explaining why finishing behind his teammate Charles Leclerc in the points last year is not as bad as everyone is making it out to be. It doesn't matter if I have 5 points more or 5 points less than Charles. It's much more important that we as a team go in the right direction. Last year that was disappointing and we took a step back. We need to understand that and get better. That's my goal, and those 5 points more or less don't interest me. He then spoke about the short memory span that the media seems to have these days. The questions are different every day, and after every result that is also the case. Nowadays they are much more concerned with short-term reports. Your performance can be a disaster one week and the next week you're a hero. He concluded by observing how things will always rise and fall and there is no need for a big reaction every time. Of course, that's always been the case, but the speed of those changes is different now. Not only in F1, but probably everywhere. Just look at the financial market where everything goes up and down as well. You used to be upset by a fall, but now it's just different every day. This comes in the wake of many in F1, including his team principal, suggesting that Vettel is eagerly waiting for racing to resume so he can silence these critics. Small teams will never be able to fight with top teams. One of the most hotly debated topics in the F1 world has been the need for a stricter budget cap. A budget cap of $175 million has already been approved, but the smaller teams have been calling for a further reduction. One of the perceived goals of the budget cap is to ensure a level playing field. FIA President Jean Todt, however, has cautioned the F1 world not to expect a miraculous situation where all the teams will suddenly have equal opportunity to win races. We shouldn't fool ourselves. Whether we have a budget cap of $120, $130 or $140 million, it remains with exceptions. Large teams spend more on those exceptions than on the expenses that fall under the budget cap, and also have the intention to increase those costs when the budget cap goes into effect. He lucidly laid out the more realistic results that can be expected. I don't believe in miracles. The difference between the top teams and the smaller teams needs to be reduced, but we shouldn't start dreaming. A small team will never be able to fight on a regular basis with the top team. We're talking about cutting expenses and not aligning all teams. Suppose we set the budget cap at $150 million, then the small teams will spend $150 and the large teams, including all exceptions, $300 million. That's bizarre. But you can't go much lower because with a cap of $50 million, you lose a lot of teams and that doesn't fit the current structure of F1 either. We have 2 options, $130 million at once or a phased trajectory in 3 years from $140 million to $130 and $120. However, there are also the exceptions because large teams have more costs, as in the case of the engine used by the other teams. He summed up his words by revealing that a final decision will be taken after further analysis. Thursday we had a meeting with the big teams, and Friday we would sit with everyone, but we postponed it to next week. We want to analyse the situation well before we make a decision. Fast feed. McLaren's Lando Norris feels that the competitions are well put together when it comes to online racing. Red Bull team boss Christian Horner has revealed that his driver Max Verstappen and his management team have always been very straightforward and easy to deal with. Max's father Jos Verstappen, meanwhile, has confirmed that his son did garner interest from another team, but Max wants to show that he can do it with Red Bull and Honda. He also feels that financially it will be very difficult for Mercedes to hire Max while keeping Lewis Hamilton, even though the outside world would have loved that, but it's probably not a good idea to have both these highly competitive drivers in the same team. Former F1 CEO Bernie Ecclestone joked that Max has grown up and doesn't provide so much entertainment anymore. He also feels that Max will definitely win the World Championship one day, just like Charles Leclerc. He further admonished Liberty Media regarding the Ferrari investigation, as he would never have allowed the confidential agreement that ended the investigation. Williams driver Nicholas Latifi revealed that it was quite an unconventional route for him into motorsport, as he didn't come from a motor racing family or a motor racing background and didn't even try a go-kart until he was 12. Ferrari Sebastian Vettel feels that people often misinterpret the passion and the Italian way of working in Ferrari, and that in reality he has seen many progressive people within the company and great talents who are given the opportunity to be creative. Former BMW team boss Mario Tiessen had the chance to sign Sebastian Vettel to BMW, but instead chose to go with Robert Kubica and admitted that you make choices and you never know how that will unfold. FIA President Jean Todt confirmed that he won't run again for the position he holds now, as it's a blessing that he still has enough passion and energy for it. F1 legend Mario Andretti is confident that Lewis Hamilton will break Michael Schumacher's record of 7 World Championship titles because he has the equipment and he's the one making the most of it. Former F1 World Champion Nico Rosberg has revealed that he did not have the talent of a Lewis Hamilton, because of which it was not realistic for him to be a world champion 9 times, just as Lewis might be able to do. And former F1 driver Felipe Massa is of the opinion that the cars in these times are great, but nobody likes it when one team dominates. Will smaller teams ever be able to compete consistently at the top? Be sure to vote in the poll and let me know what you think in the comments. And if you like this video, feel free to subscribe and check out my others for all the latest in the world of Formula 1.